Good day again, everyone, to the ADOxx.org webinar. We are talking today about the installation of the ADOxx Metamodelling platform. My name is Nedim Rifat-Begovic. I'm the moderator of this webinar, and I'm going to walk you through the installation steps. And this is my colleague Mateusz Dziedic. He's discussing some common issues, and at the end we will have time for your questions and answers. The contact information are info@ADOxx.org, where you can always send us your questions. So these are the webinar rules today. All microphones are muted, and please type your questions into the chat window as soon as you have a question. And at the end we will answer them. All the questions we don't answer now during the webinar because of the time issues, we will send you later via email. Thank you. So this is today's agenda. We are going to walk you through the installation steps and show you the installation guide. We are going to discuss some common installation issues and show you the solutions. And at the end, as we said, we'll have some time for questions and answers. As soon as you have a question, please type it into the chat window, and the questions that we don't answer now during the webinar because of the time, we will answer via email after the webinar. Thank you. So let's start with the ADOxx installation walkthrough. So you should have by now the zip package which you downloaded on ADOxx.org, and also you have received the ADOxx license. If you already requested for a license, you should already have seen this window. And after you get the license should look like this. After you unzip your package, these are the files that you have received. So let's start with the installation guide with the hardware and software requirements. We are going first to open ADOxx.org. Here you can see the installation guide and the hardware and software requirements. As you can see, there are many different types of installation, but we're going to focus now on a new installation of ADOxx. And on the hardware and software requirements part, it is important to say that ADOxx is a Microsoft application. And here you can see more details about that. So let's move on with our presentation. Here you can see the installation process of ADOxx. So we have here the installation wizard, which is taking care of the database installation, the database initialization, and the tool installation, which contains the development and the modeling toolkit. At the end, we have to validate the installation. Now we have prepared a short video for you, where we will walk through the installation steps. So let's start with the ADOxx installation guide. The first, as we have seen on the process before, is the database installation. So after you unzip your zip file, you will receive these files. So let's move on to the setup.x file. Let's start it and let's install. So for the database, it is important to say that it is a Microsoft SQL server. So now we are basically searching for the right database. And for example, if you have Windows 10, like in this video, you will download the SQL Server 2012. So all these steps now are going automatically in help of the wizard. The next step, so after the database is installed, we will have to use our license. So to insert the license code that you have received from ADOxx.org. So after the database is installed and the custom setup, we go to the next, we push the next button. Now you have a new window where you should enter your customer and your license number, which you can copy just from the license that you have received. Again, I am sorry if the video is slow. As we said on start, we are having some internet problems and we are using now an improvised connection. So our system admins are taking care of it right now. Thank you. After we inserted the installation code, we are moving on with the installation. So we are going now through the database initialization and the installation of the platform. So during the database initialization, what is happening? Basically, we are creating the needed tables in the database. It is important to say that we are also using the named instance and mixed mode authentication. What does that mean? We're having an SQL user which is connecting with the database. But it is important to say that the SQL user is not the same user as the ADOxx user. Now again, this is going automatically and it will take some time till the platform is installed. Let's jump to the ending part. So after we created and initialized the database, we log in to our development toolkit and there we have the tool. You can also look at this video later under this link. So on ADOxx.org under tutorial. Thank you. Now we are going to talk about the login to the ADOxx admin toolkit and the modeling toolkit. So let's start with the development toolkit, which is this one. You can see also this question under the FAQ, and we're logging in always with the default username, which is admin, and the password is password. So for the development toolkit, we're using username admin and the password is password. And the database name is ADOxx.DB. And the next part is if you want to use at the same time the development toolkit and the modeling toolkit, you have to create a new user. So start your ADOxx development toolkit, access user management, and create a new user by selecting add. I'm going to show you now these steps, and you can also take a look on our FAQ under this link. So let's open our development toolkit. Like we said, the username is admin and the password is password. Now we have to create a new user for the modeling toolkit. We're going to hit this button add. Let's just create a random user. For example, we will use the name webinar and the password is 123. Also now confirm the password 123. Here you can choose your application library. We will use for this example the standard library. We have to sign now the user group, then click OK. Now add the user. The user webinar has been created. Close. Now we can use the modeling toolkit and the development toolkit at the same time. So let's type username webinar and password is 123. It takes a few seconds and now you can see we logged in both development toolkit and the modeling toolkit at the same time. So let's move on with our presentation. Let's open again our development toolkit. Here you can see user management, library management, model management, and the attribute profile management. What are those? On this diagram, you can see that each each component is managing a special part of the ADOxx library. So for example, the user management is managing the user groups and the users. So we're creating users and assigning them to different groups. We have also the library management, which is there for the application libraries, which are also saved in the ADOxx library. So basically the library management is creating new classes, creating new relation classes, creating new modeling types, is there for the libraries. We have also the model management, which is there to handle the model groups and models. So assigning the models to the model groups. And at least we have, at the end we have the attribute profile management, which is there to manage the attribute profiles and the profile groups. You can take a look at this picture again under this link, so under ADOxx.org theory definitions. Now I'm handing to my colleague Mateus over. He's going to discuss some common installation issues that can pop up during the installation. Thank you. Please, Mateus.
So welcome also from my side. As Nedim already mentioned, we will see now a divergence from the standard installation process. The issues you are going to see are the most common issues which we recognized during our community work in the past. So what Nedim showed you was the standard installation process, and I would like to show you how to handle exceptions. So the first issue is, where do I see a ADB inst 13 or a login 22 error message? And the point here is, since ADOxx is a non-Unicode application, these issues can occur in case there is a mismatch between the non-Unicode settings and the database collection used. So I will give you an example. Let's say you have a Greek language PC and try to run the default database installation, which uses a specific Latin-based collation set that is not defined for Greek characters. Then the installation will not proceed and you will get the ADB inst 13 error. And why is that? Because the default Latin collation does not allow to save Greek characters in the database. And there are three solutions of how to solve such an issue. And during a standard installation process of ADOxx, a new database instance with a Latin-based collation is created. Thus, the first solution is just to adapt the non-Unicode settings to the server collation. So here you just have to change the language in the language and region section of the control panel to a supported language, like for example English. And you can find more information on the solution in the following FAQ entries. And solution 2 is, instead of changing the language for non-Unicode programs, you can remove the current database instance installation in the program and feature section of the control panel and create a new database instance called ADOxx15en with a collation type which supports, for example, the Greek characters. And here you can also find more information on this solution in the following FAQ entries. And solution 3 is to simply use a virtual English Microsoft environment. And we will take a closer look on the installation of ADOxx in a virtualization environment later in this webinar. So the next issue is, why does Microsoft SQL Server fail to install? Well, there can be multiple reasons for this issue. Two of the most frequent ones are that there is no internet connection during the installation and that the Windows update is waiting in the background. And there are two possible solutions on how to solve this issue, depending on why it occurred. So solution 1 is just to check if you have access to the internet during the installation of the Microsoft SQL Server instance. And this can be done in the control panel of your PC in the Network and Sharing section. And you can find more information regarding the solution in the following FAQ entry. The second solution is to download and install the SQL Server manually. So you can either use the database engine installation file included in the ADOxx download package, or alternatively download the database engine installation file directly from the Microsoft website. And here, for further information, please have a look at the following FAQ entry, where you can also find a link to a step-by-step guide. So the next issue is, why do I get an login 14 error? Well, this error mainly occurs when you try to log into an ADOxx toolkit using a non-existing username. And to solve this issue, you can follow these two steps which Nedim already described in the webinar. So step 1 is to log in to the ADOxx development toolkit, and step 2 is to create a new user in the ADOxx development toolkit. And you can find more information regarding those two steps in the following FAQ entries. And the next issue is, how do I install ADOxx on a non-Windows operating system? Well, the point here is that ADOxx is a Windows application, and thus it can only be installed on a Windows operating system. However, virtualization offers a possibility to use ADOxx on other operating systems. Basically, you can solve this issue by following these 3 steps. In the first step, you need to install a virtualization environment on your host operating system of your PC. And there are different providers of virtualization software for several operating systems. And an example of such a virtualization software is VirtualBox. The second step is to install Microsoft Windows as a guest operating system on the virtualization platform. For this purpose, you can have a look at the step-by-step walkthrough on the VirtualBox as an example under the following link. And the last step is the standard ADOxx installation. And that is what Nedim already demonstrated in this webinar. And you can find further information regarding this issue and a link to an example on the basis of a Mac operating system in the FAQ section. So this is how it looks like on an Oracle VM VirtualBox. So I have now covered the most common installation issues that we have observed in the past, and I will hand back to Nedim to conclude the webinar.
So thank you, Mateus. Now we have only more time for one question, and the other questions that we receive in the chat window or on the email after the webinar, we will answer via email after the webinar. So I will let's answer the first question that we have. We got a question from an attendee, which is regarding the ADB Inst 13 and the Login 22 issue. So the question is, you have enumerated 3 solutions, and my question would be if there are some pros and cons for each solution, meaning which is the best? Thank you.
Well, that is an interesting question. Let's say for complex languages like, for example, Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, we recommend solution 3, namely to install a virtual English Microsoft environment. And that is because the adaptation of the database collation is not possible for those complex languages. But for example, for the Greek language, which we took as an example, you can also apply solution 1 or 2. But if you take solution 1 and just adapt the non-Unicode settings from Greek to English and keep the default database collation, then there would be one drawback, namely that the Greek characters will not be stored properly in the database. I hope that this answered your question.
Thank you, Mateus, and thank you for your question. All the questions we received, we will answer via email after the webinar. Thank you. Now we have some community news, and let's take a short look. So there are some new application scenarios, for example, for the cloud and for open data and IoT, which you can take a look at the ADOxx.org development spaces on this link. There are also some new news for the Metamodelling platform, like the Lola Petrinet verification and the ADOxx simulation, which you can also take a look under ADOxx.org building blocks. And here you can see some interesting numbers. For example, that our community has now more than 1,700 developers. In case of any question after the webinar, please send us an email on info@adoxx.org. And in order to stay up to date with all the news, upcoming webinars and so on, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and join our LinkedIn group. Now again, I'm sorry because of the internet problems. We had to use an improvised connection, and the system admins were taking care of it now. I'm thanking you for attending the webinar. Until next time.